My, that brought back memories for me. I was at that concert all of 36 years ago now. It seems such a long time ago. One of my favourite bands, so I was singing away in the background. Anyway, let's get into the show. And this is An Evening with Thomas, and today marks the return of what is quite a popular series, or it turned out to be a popular series anyway. This was created to give people a chance to tell their story. You know, it can be nerve-wracking for many, as it's the first time in public they rip off their masks and tell the real version of themselves. As always, I will coax people into saying more than they wish, because I'm the trigger man, pulling at you to bring out the best in you. And for many, that is laid hidden inside the nest of Russian dolls. All of us in the alt media have been strangled at the throat chakra, frightened to speak, as our views and ways are in stark contrast to the rest of the world. And this leads to limitation, reductionism, introvert and insular, but deep inside of the control system around, which is not done by the cabal but the people. There is a version in all of you that wants to be heard. But can you find a safe environment to do so? Will I have the courage? Isn't sovereignty about you being you and not being frightened of what others think? That is the key to being sovereign. Let others judge. You stand in your own sovereignty. An Evening with Thomas is that safe environment and platform for you to be you. And today's guest with all her inhibitions from a difficult past that, like myself, made things worse by saying too much at wrong times. Perhaps that astrology thing has something to do with it after all. She has learned to overcome the trauma-based vessel, to grow within our group and expand out like a blossoming flower with her insight into understanding people and situations, the ability to see future think and add balance to any given situation. So today I'm delighted to join her on her show, and today's host is Michelle Hansack. Hi Michelle.
Hi Tommy, how's it going?
Hectic as per usual, but that's the way it is, you know. So I've been pondering for a while to have restart this. I think it's time, and I'm glad that you are the first back, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of fun together. Well, I know we will. And
Yeah.
we can hear more of your story, which is a common theme for many people in the alt media. Is we've all gone through difficult family traumas, relationship backgrounds, and feeling we never fit in. We were never meant to fit in. That's the reality of it all. And then gaining an understanding of what's around you and ultimately yourself. And that's your path, that's my path, and it's the path of many within THI. So the first part we're going to go into is your background, like an overview of your life and work, and also volunteer experiences to establish who and what is Michelle.
Okie dokie. It began, before I was born actually, when I'm the oldest of 3 girls. And my parents were older. My mother was 36 and my father is 8 years older than her. And at the time my mom was pregnant with me was when the Bridie Murphy story broke, which was a book and a story about reincarnation. And she always reported that she was highly, highly upset because she knew that she was carrying an old soul in a new body, and that just really upset her. So I guess she always knew that I was different, and I became a bit of a challenge, as it were, also. But she knew that I was an old soul in a young body. So when I was born, it was a birth with cord around the neck and a broken rib, and the typical 1956 birth, you know, the baby separated from the mother. Mom was highly anesthetized and really never took meds, so she was knocked out for like a day and a half. She said she woke up and heard this baby crying in the nursery. Baby crying about, and the nurse said, "Oh, that's your baby." It was like a day and a half after my birth before she even held me.
No.
I don't exactly remember it, but that's what I'm told.
Yeah, well, there's lots of old souls in here. Some remember why they came in here. Some don't. Many don't, in fact. And that's part of what THI is all about, is getting people to remember. I'm not telling people anything new, largely. It's just getting people to remember who and what they are.
Exactly. Exactly. That's where it's at.
Yeah, you know, it's it's kind of difficult. The shows over the past 3 weeks have heightened levels of understanding. It's also created 1,000,001 questions in people's heads. But this is the value of inner work and understanding yourself. And that's the key to everything. You know, what other people are doesn't really matter. It's not selfish. It is a single goal, which then can go on to help others. But you have to get yourself right first, you know, and it's all about letting go of the lies you've learned, the programming, and finding the real you. And these shows are designed to help with that. Of course, you're a big advocate on the MeWe chat of trying to help people also, which is good, because that helps me. So.
Mutual, I'm sure. Yeah. But let's see. Carrying on now, at about a year old, I had my first memory, and I can still see it very clearly. And let me step back a minute. When I was born, my parents were building a house, so it was before the day and age of interstates, since I'm a dinosaur. So they dropped me off at my grandparents, my maternal grandparents, with whom I still grew up very, very close. But my grandparents were from the old country, raised me for the first year. They were farmers and hardy peasant stock people. I'm mostly Ruth, a bit of Slovak, but mostly of the Ruth. And they spoke Slovak between themselves, but never to us. It wasn't valuable. It held you back. So the first year I was raised by my grandparents, and my parents would visit on the weekends between building a house. But so at about in May, Mom said that on Mother's Day, the house was finished, and I moved in with them, which was about 13 months old. And my first memory was rather interesting. I remember standing in the crib, and they just finished the house mostly, but it wasn't totally finished. So they had this chest freezer in the bedroom next to my crib. And it's the only reason I can date it to about 13 to 14 months old, because my next sister, Lynn, was born 16 months after me, and in preparation for her birth, they put a second crib in the bedroom. So the freezer was still in the bedroom. And I remember seeing that little light on the chest freezer and looking down the short hallway and seeing shadows on the walls. And I heard them fighting. My parents were they had a very toxic relationship. And I heard them fighting, and I didn't have language, but I could feel it. I've always been fairly empathic and can feel things. And I could feel the waves of anger and everything, and I remember feeling it and seeing the shadows on the hallway and thinking, I have made a terrible mistake. I have made an awful mistake, and I can't go back. What have I done? It was, I still remember, it was just, it was like a wave that came over me. It was like, I have made an awful mistake. What have I done? And I can't go back. So that was, it's funny in hindsight, but at the time, what happens a lot of times is because children are very egocentric, so that I made a mistake became I was the mistake. And that's something that I've always struggled with, that I am a mistake. And as I've done some of the shadow work, and I'm always questioning and trying to figure out any adversity, I'm trying to go, hey, what's the value in this? And it's from a very selfish standpoint, but because it's like, I don't want to repeat this. Let me get this lesson. Because I really don't want to keep revisiting this. This doesn't feel good. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But it was the toxic parent, and that I was a mistake. And I think that goes back to when we first came into human existence. We made a mistake. What have we done? You can't go back. But here we are stuck in human form. We bumped down in levels.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how the echoes of that come through into this frequency or lifetime.
Yeah. It's all the same.
Yeah. It feels like echoes to me. It's just like, you're getting a skip in the radio station.
Yes.
But, anyhow, my sister Lynn was born 15 months after me. And my mom always said that as a kid, that people would comment. She said, I had this light in my eyes. So people would describe it like, oh my God, she's like there's a candle lit behind her eyes. And of course the flames went out. And my mom always kind of blamed me for that, but here I am. I'm a mistake. I've got toxic parents. It's rather dims things down if it doesn't. Not.
This, again, is a common theme. There's a reason why people are in THI.
Okay.
Some people will know it, and some people have yet to learn it, or yet to learn, yet to remember. And the early wave started in the late 50s, early 60s, all ended up with families that were disconnected. Dysfunctional is the better term. And we did not get much help. And that was the mistake. I think many of us, you mentioned that you felt you were a mistake. I felt that I wasn't their child. And this is a common theme. For the simple reason is, somehow you don't fit in here. And then it's about readjusting to the frequencies which are different from whence you came. And then you've got to deal with this family that appears to be
broken. I'm being kind.
Not in alignment, shall we say. And that was a difficult process, was it not?
Oh, it how do you Americans say? It took life through screen doors. Yes, it was. It was painful. It was absolutely, positively painful because he never did fit in, and there was always the fighting, and you could feel the energy all the time, and it was dark and heavy, and I had this high level of frustration that when I would think or envision something, it didn't appear. It was so frustrating. I should have been able to manifest, and it's so slow, and everything is like wading through molasses or something. It was, I knew I didn't fit in. And that wasn't a bad thing when you looked at the family. Did you really want to fit in?
No.
But you just have that need to be supported, and you don't know. You just don't know. And time marched on, and so I'm the oldest of 3 girls, and it's interesting because all 3 of us, our fires are different. We burn different. My sister Lynn's a Leo, and she has that warm hearth fire. Denise is 4 years younger than me. She's a Virgo. She's that cold, cutting, incisive laser fire. And then there was Michelle. She's an Aries, a triple Aries, and my fire tends to be more of, shall we say, fireworks or perhaps an atomic mushroom cloud or something like that. A passion, as it were, and it scared the hell out of my mother. I mean, I knew it did, and her thing was about power and control, and I remember her saying, "I will break you."
Yes, I got that.
And it didn't happen. So there you have it.
No. That was
difficult.
That was one of the funny stories. I remember the fallout of Cosmic Voice, and people were saying, Chloe was my handler.
Oh, jeez.
And I told my mother, she said, well, if I couldn't handle you, I'm sure Chloe has little to no chance, you know.
Yeah.
We're not here to be handled or controlled or to fit in or to conform. We're not here for that.
No, but they do try. They're always
they will try.
These ringers, and they're always going to try. I've seen that forever and ever in my life, and it's at this point, as Spock would say, it's fascinating.
Yep.
And I felt sorry. I do feel sorry for my parents in hindsight. At the time, it was will against will. It truly was. And I was always thinking. I mean, in first grade, I was at Christmas. I was incensed. I was so angry at Santa Claus because I had to go through my toy box and pull out some toys so we could give them to Toys for Tots, so the poor kids could have a Christmas. And I was infuriated. And my mom just, I guess she said, she went to my father and said, "This is the last year for Santa Claus for that one." Because I was so mad. I said, "What's wrong with Santa? Doesn't he like poor kids? I have to give my old toys to these kids so they can have a Christmas." I was really upset. Stuff didn't make sense.
No, nothing makes sense here.
It didn't.
And that's kind of part of letting go. And this is the phase we're in now is all about letting go. But it's letting go of the illusion. That is the key to understanding it. Letting go of the illusion. Letting go of the mask of the self that we've all projected, which is not the real you. It's all caving in. And then we get the real version. If the real version is not what you wish others to see, then it's up to those people to correct and realign It's all about realigning now and letting go of the self, or what you have projected to be the self, which is the mask, which is the Russian doll, and standing in your own sovereignty and being the doll. Not several dolls, just the one.
It's the story, the fiction. You want to live a fiction.
Yep. So, as we say, common sense is rare.
So uncommon. Yes. Anyhow, I had some abilities as a kid, but I throttled them down because.
Yep.
I told the story, I think, on chat about the spelling bee contest. When I was in grade school, I used to like to, everybody would stand up and they'd go down the row. The teacher would go down the row and give you a word, and if you spelled it, you get to stay standing, and if you missed it, you had to sit down, and the last one standing won, right? So I would get into the kids' minds, and I'd have them misspell the words the way I wanted them to misspell it so I could win. And I'd go home from school, and I told my mom, I said, oh, this is really cool. Like, ha, 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 I won the spelling bee contest again this week. And she thought it was hilarious, and I realized, oh, that's not good. I mean, it's not like my parents, my mom was able to say, that's really not nice doing that to people. I had to figure that out myself, but intuitively I knew you don't get into people's minds and you don't control them that way for your own gain. That is nedobre. That's not a good thing.
No,
no.
It's anti-sovereignty. We covered that in the last show. Is it not the case that we're forcing them into waking up when they choose not?
Yeah. I just felt like my mom didn't get it. It's like, that's not good. That's just not a good thing. And I went through grade school and I was bored out of my mind. I escaped through reading and daydreaming. I read every book that was in the library and everything. I mean, the teachers really didn't know what to do with me because I'd get it. They'd have the week assignment on the chalkboard before they had whiteboards, because I'm a dinosaur. They had chalkboards. And I'd get it done the first day, and I'd be bored the rest of the week. So grade school sucked. It was really, really, really boring, which is hard when you have so much fire anyhow. And then middle school was worse. I was tall for my age. I was one of the taller kids in the class. I was skinny. I wore eyeglasses, and I was intelligent. Because that's a kiss of death. That's why I was really shy. I became painfully shy. My only escape through grade school and middle school, or in high school actually, was band. I enjoyed music. I played E-flat clarinet in high school for the concert band and bass drum for the marching band. But that was about it.
A creative escapism.
Yes, and it was a lot of people in band. They're kind of misfits in their own way because they like music, and it's not just the popular music, but you're playing some classical and different types of music, and you're not a jock or an athlete, and they're a bit of misfits, and band in high school is all 4 grades combined, so you're not just stuck in with same age peers.
Yeah.
And you got to go outside for marching band and things like that. It was the most pleasant, quite frankly, the most pleasant part, because I hated school. I was very good at it.
Ooh.
But I hated home more. So I didn't mind going to school, even though I hated school, because I could be quiet and, be invisible. But at home, it was worse, so school was better, even though I hated school. And I'm very, very good at education because I can read and play their game.
Yeah.
So, in high school, I double majored and more hid in my mind and my intellectual stuff. I mean, I double majored. I was college prep in business, and I also worked full time from 16 on, and summers through middle school and high school. I did 4-H and junior leadership, and that was sewing and cooking and demonstration contests, and I was so shy, and my mother made me go to junior leadership, and it was awful because I so did not fit in because those were the cool kids.
Yeah, it's, as I say, it's eerily similar to many other, you just described mainly most of my school. I was clever, really clever, reading, writing and arithmetic, which is the basic essentials which they don't teach anymore.
Yeah.
I know the teachers' union, like the cat union, are going to go after me now. But the basics, if you can't get the basics right, then the child has no chance unless they have an inner fire where they then become their own teachers, and they learn at their own pace. I learned 0 from 10 to 16 in school. Nothing. None of it interested me. And you sound exactly the same. It's hard to articulate as a child what you know. And I had knowledge that I didn't know where it come from. It certainly didn't come from a book, because I've had an aversion in this lifetime to reading books. I just can't do it, and it becomes a battle of wills, and in essence, in a roundabout way, that helped you, did it not? When you look back now, not at the time, because it was very painful, adjusting to frequencies that we're not used to, not having certain abilities that you were used to in previous lifetimes, parents who are not conducive, to put it bluntly, and siblings who are competitive and comparative. It's all the same flow. But in essence, it's the dark lessons again, is it not?
Absolutely. It absolutely is. It's funny because I was working full time and double majoring in high school. I didn't study. And I graduated, National Honor Society, 4-point average and all that bullshit. I mean, I didn't study. This stuff was so flippin' boring.
Yeah.
And I told my mom, I said, I had 2 really outstanding teachers, and they really taught you to think, but I told my mom, I said, I don't need good teachers. I said, those of us in the honors class, Mom, we don't need good teachers. The good teachers should be put with the kids who are struggling, because we will learn on our own if we want to. The whole system to me was upside down and inside out, and that's before even Common Core and before it really went to hell in a handbasket.
Pretty much.
And then I went on to college, and I overcame the shyness in college because I was out of my parents' home. It was freeing that way. My mother was very, very controlling, and I was in marching band in college, and again, people in marching band kind of are the misfits, but the friends I had in college, we didn't drink, we just hung around and things like that. And when I was in college, I got engaged with a football player and defensive tackle for the University of Akron, but he was really controlling, and he pushed me once, and I broke up with him. But that was the beginning of, this male stuff, this is kind of dangerous sometimes. Oh, shit. But, that's the way it is. And at that time, my grandmother, with whom I was really close, my grandfather had already passed on. My father's parents, his father was out of his life when he was like 5 years old. And his mother, my paternal grandmother, died when I was very young. So the only grandparents I knew were my mother's people. And my grandfather had died. My grandmother was in a nursing home. And I actually scheduled my college classes. So I had Friday afternoon off so I could go see her in the nursing home. I was very, very, very close to her. She was highly intuitive and a healer in her own right. She spoke broken English. And she pretty much saved my sisters and my life in a large sense as far as they were a safe place to be. Since home never felt that. And I'm not saying that there weren't some good times. I'm not saying my parents were total losers, but when you look at the lessons and the memories, because they were tough. They were necessary. They've made me who I am today. My middle sister and I have discussed that. My kid sister is Denise, is Cleopatra. She's the queen of denial. But Lynn and I can look back and say, my mom was a rageaholic and a control freak, and she had generalized anxiety disorder, and quite frankly, she was narcissistic. And when I render diagnoses, people have to understand. When I don't say, oh, you're crazy, or you're this or that, I'm serious. I have a master's degree in mental health, and I don't seek a diagnosis lightly. It's not light. I'm serious when I say it. So my mother was narcissistic, and when I had emailed my sister the diagnostic criteria, she went, oh, that's Mom. And I went, no kidding, huh?
Yeah.
Well, answer that. And it was good. You'd come home from school, and you'd have to push your feelings into the room to see. Yeah. Should you go in there as a happy child? Should you kind of go in there quiet? Or is it better just to turn around and go back outside? Is it safe to go in there? She always made you responsible for her emotions and feelings. It was never her fault. It was always somebody else's fault. Yep. She was an angry, miserable woman. And it wasn't her fault.
It's
but she couldn't fix it.
No, she didn't have the will that you have. That's the difference. So, like my mother went through a traumatic childhood, and there was involved violence and heavy amounts of control, and my mother was basically the one out of a family of 7, I think. Yeah, 7, who did everything. They always pick on one, and the others get away with all kinds, but that one doesn't, and that was the same. And instead of not liking, she clearly didn't like it. The grandfather used to make her do fight with a box, and he'd punch her, and instead of realizing I didn't like that life myself, so I'm not going to repeat it in the next family line. She just repeated it. And my dad had similar. He was kind of the black sheep as well, and felt he wasn't loved and all that, and he repeated it. And this is why I said in recent shows we're repairing the mistakes of the past right through the bloodline. This timeline is about repairing not only your ills or your traumas, but the family line as well. And I know you enjoyed that piece particularly because you kind of feel that's what you've been doing, not being them going forward. I tried hard with my children to not replicate what happened to me. I didn't really want 2 children. I was honest about that because of the favoritism that went on in my life, and it was blatantly obvious to all and sundry. But when I look back now, the difference between myself and my sister. She's a mess, and she thinks everything comes to her. I think we were, so, if you get into trouble or your TV breaks down or the washing machine breaks down, she runs to mum and dad, and mum and dad pay. Whereas I've always had to do things for myself, which can be frustrating, but it teaches you also the value, and you make your own choices. And like yourself, I couldn't wait to get out of school, and I couldn't wait to get away from the family life either. So if I'm going to make mistakes, I'm going to make my own, and it's not dictated. You said something earlier, by their emotions. I'm going to define my own, and not dance around there, treading on eggshells. Essentially, that's what you were doing when you walked into a room. You were treading on eggshells. How are they going to be? Well, it's as you put in your piece, it's a toxic environment, and family life for me was also toxic, and many people, John Bryan was another one, who went through the same, hated school, and parents were a bit difficult, and even I spoke to Nasser Harriman. He had the same thing. They were all telling him he was stupid, and I went through that, and you went through that, and it's all about trying to overcome that adversity, which is difficult as a child, because you expect parents and teachers to love you and look after you, and then you realise, well, actually they're not, but in a roundabout way they are. It's just not the way you expected.
I mean, yeah, it wasn't, there was no emotional support, and I was the rebel, even though I never really did anything wrong. My passion and my fire, like I said, I think it terrified my mother. It absolutely terrified her, and she would control it, she thought. She tried. But yeah, it's tough, but it makes you, it forces you to be strong. I mean, in my mind, I remember saying to myself, I will never ask you for anything because it comes at too high a price. Yeah. Because then I will owe you, and you will call it in, and you will make me pay, and I will not pay that high a price. So I will never ask you for anything.
Yeah,
that's conscious of will. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I never asked. It's like magic; it always comes at a price.
Yes, this is it's too expensive. I'm not responsible for you, and I will not. And that was the way it went. It's even through college, even though I lived at college and didn't live at home, it was tough. She was doing her best to control me. She was also terrified about males, and oh, God forbid if you ever got pregnant, it was, don't bother coming home. Yeah. Well, okay. We'll make sure that doesn't happen in that case. Well, but,
it's a wonder you didn't go ahead. If that had been me, I'd have gone ahead and done it. That was the way I was. I was cold belligerent. If people says, don't do that. That was about the worst thing you could say to me.
Oh dear, yeah. I'm just no defiant, I believe we call that, but whatever.
Yeah, that was my way of fighting back. Well, you told me if you hadn't have mentioned it, I wouldn't have done it. But you told me, don't do it. That's about the worst thing me at that age you could tell me to do, because I'm going right ahead and doing it, because it's
good idea. Yeah.
my own sovereignty on it. You can't tell me what to do. And it gets passed off as being cheeky and anti-authority. But then parents overall are not there to control children. They're there to teach them to be better versions than themselves. And this is where parenting over the last, particularly, and maybe it's always been that way, but it has got worse, where you had the problem in America where they over-exaggerate the child. My child's this, and it's got this award.
That's my kid's sister, yeah.
And the child, Americans call their females the princess, and I'm thinking, my son had met an American and married this American, and she's saying, "Come here, princess, come here, princess," and I'm thinking, what happens when she goes to school and realizes that everyone in the class is a princess? When they think they are, it's creating expectations for that child that then puts the child under pressure. We're not here to put children under pressure. That's why we have to change the school system, because it's putting kids deliberately under pressure and sending them spiraling, which ends up going into drugs and early pregnancies and all the other stuff, which then makes them dependent on the state. We have to grow children. It's like a plant in essence. The seed, and then as it grows. Well, you can't keep expecting something to grow if you keep cutting away at it. And that's modern day parenting. Is the child has almost become a reflection of the parents.
They absolutely are. It's just an extension of ego. I see that with my kids.
Yeah, my child goes to this school. No, the child goes to that school. And that's part of the problem. And then the child gets into school, or it gets into a sport, and the child must achieve what the people on TV have achieved, otherwise it's a failure. Well, you're setting people up to fail before they've even started. We have to remember these are young adults. They're not playthings that must get this award and must pass this test at the first time. No, they need to learn to grow. And that's a big difference.
We've made them a mirror of ourselves.
Yeah.
That's all. A mini-me. And you're not letting them fail and hurt and be human. I see that a lot now. I've worked with kids in counseling. There's the, what they call the helicopter parent, the hover. They hover over the child, and then there's the opposite, the polar opposite. There's the drug addict, alcoholic, neglectful, and abusive parent. And we need to strike that middle road. But, what you going to do, Miss Scarlett?
But
I don't have the answers. I could only work on myself, and
Well, you have more answers than you give yourself credit. I've noticed that, as I notice things, and you've kind of set boundaries, which is again another control system, is it not?
Well, boundaries can be healthy in a way also.
Yeah.
In counseling, so many counselors don't set boundaries, and they over-relate with the client, and even in relationships, you're sovereign. That's a boundary. This is me, and I've struggled with that as feeling empathic, because it's been difficult. I remember my first marriage. I'd be in the kitchen cooking. Okay, I'm going to make supper. Okay, and suddenly I'm really angry, and I'm cutting the vegetables, and I'm going, son of a bitch, and then I'm doing this, and I'm going, what the heck? What's going on?
Yeah.
I did this a couple times, and I'm going, like Michelle, what? And I looked at it, and I felt it, and I went, oh, this is my mother's anger. I'm carrying my mom's anger because I came in here in a good mood and I'm not angry and, I'm happy to be cooking. But this is my mother's anger that I'm carrying. So you have to have boundaries in a way to know, like, what's yours and what isn't, especially when you're empathic, because you feel, you touch people energetically and you feel.
Yeah.
And you have to know, is this mine or isn't it? Where's this feeling of sadness or this anger? Where's this coming from? Is this me? Is there a logical reason? No, this isn't me. This isn't my, through the family line. Did I pick it up from a public building? Or, is this my parents' stuff? What is me and what is not me? And I think that's a sovereign, healthy boundary.
Yeah.
That way. If that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, it's, you just mentioned the empath. If everyone had empathy, this world would be a better place. Because real empathy means you feel what the other person is feeling. Mm-hmm. And from an overview, which I often do, how can you be a nurse or a doctor and not be an empath?
Absolutely.
An empath will get a sense of feeling of the pain or the trauma or the you've done psychology. You can get inside people's heads and experience some of that trauma, and which is a gift, but it's also it comes at a price if you do not balance it. Because then you often take on the trauma too much. It's when to be in that zone and when not to. And empathy is something that an ability that's kind of lost on this planet over time. If you're an empath, how can you go and beat the hell out of somebody? Mm-hmm. Well, the answer is you can't, because you will feel that pain. And then you've got the likes of the MK Ultra programs. Those people are devoid of any empathy whatsoever. We covered this in the Illuminati 1. Illuminati 2 wasn't much better, but 1 was fairly brutal. You can't ask an empath to go and do that level of torture. They won't be able to do it, for the simple reason is every time they do or ask to do a task, they're experiencing that pain or whatever they're doing. And if we had more empaths, this world would be a better place, because then you have to have responsibility with it, which is something that many of our species lack, is personal responsibility. It's always somebody else's fault and somebody else is going to fix it. Well, with empathy, it changes.
Yes, Mother.
it changes, doesn't it?
It does. In fact, when we do go to the break, the first song that I had chosen, and I really want people to listen to the words to the songs, because I put a lot of thought and effort into the song. But the first song, at first blush, sounds like a love song, but I chose it, and it's by Dan Hill. I chose it because the words most clearly exemplify how I feel when I'm engaging in chat and supporting people in THI, and how I feel when I'm engaging in therapy and counseling sessions with people. So, like I said, it sounds like a love song, but if you think about the manner and the energetic levels that I touch people with, it's not really a love song. It's explaining how it feels to operate from the place I'm coming from. So people get a better understanding of where I'm at, but just to keep in your mind.
We'll play that song now. We'll save the other one for later.
Okay.
What Michelle's explaining is an essential, what we've been talking about a lot in THI, the external and internal. People like the external touch, but the internal touch is far more powerful. We'll be back shortly with more from Michelle. That was Dan Hill, and Sometimes When We Touch. The internal, external aspect, which I mentioned before, you're one of the ones that gets that. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
It's all about internal. I mean, truly, everything. I've always, like I said, I've looked at things even in high school going, okay, what's going on? Trying to figure out, what is this about? Because I always knew. I always saw things. My family is rather intuitive for the most part, and I could see and feel things that way. So it's internal and it's reflected. Even you look at past lives, and depending on your viewpoint of past lives, my take on past lives is a matter of frequency. They're all concurrent. It's like, AM, FM radio stations. So you're listening to 107.5 or 98.6. They're all broadcasting, and sometimes you get the skip or bleed through from other frequencies, which are other past lives and times. So that's coming through internally. And the information is there, and you can maybe start seeing the patterns. Has this happened? Is this familiar? Is this from this life? Or I've had a lot of past life spontaneous memories, which I really didn't ask for. Thank you very much. But
you did. I'm sorry, but you did.
Next time I'll read the fine print. Jesus.
You did.
As my grandma would say. I must have. Next time I'll read the fine print. Damn it.
Yes.
But it's just another a tool. It's not an ego thing. Past life, I believe, it's not my first past life remembrance was when I was in high school. I used to get these horrible stomach aches, and some of it was because I was overloaded empathically. I mean, it hit me in the solar plexus. But these were these shooting pains, and so I'm laying in bed one night, and suddenly I was this little male Amazonian who got ambushed by another tribe, and they split open my stomach and disemboweled me, and I was laying face down on the floor of the rainforest, and I died. Pretty simple. It's not, I wasn't the king or queen. My name's not Cleopatra. I'm not important that way, but I never had those stomach aches again.
No.
You can use it as a tool, and I've had several big ones that when I shared that on one of my soapbox Sundays about leaving people behind, hoping that people would get why why is it so hard for us to leave the others behind, even though that's their destiny, their future, their choice? Why do we have to control them? And is it because we couldn't save them before in other time spaces, frequencies, past life, whatever?
Yeah, there's a piece I wrote yesterday that goes into that for the next show.
Come to that.
There's some things within the show where you can say in a black and white term, like Butch Senior is dead,
Right.
or Anu is dead, and there's some things you have to dance around because it's important in some aspects that the people themselves have to come to that understanding rather than spelling it out. This is what's going to happen. It's all about recall and remembering. All I do is trigger, you know.
And you do that well, may I add? I'm that. Once I was registered for that ebook, and I needed to go there. And thank you very much, Mr. Williams.
Are you going to do the grrr now? Or are you going to call me that other 7-letter word that you freak?
Vaperseni Brit, Dembrit.
Yeah, you've done it again, bastard.
I know that. You had. But it is triggering if you allow it. And that's a good thing if you let it come. If you, it's like, for those of us who are messy cooks, and you're cleaning up the pot, and you put water in it, and you put it on the stove to boil to loosen up all of the debris in it, and the debris loosens and floats to the top, and you skim it off, and you have a clean pot when you're done. That's kind of what, if you let that happen, let all of that float up to the top and skim it off.
Yep.
Be done with it. And you trigger, you're good at that. But I interrupted, go right ahead.
No, that's fine. You know, it's, we all get glimpses of past, but too often, that's a coincidence, or it's a deja vu, or the Mandela Effect, or it was
I'm crazy?
Probably a dream, and all this stuff. Yeah. We go to great lengths to deny what we already know. You know, and I'd like you to talk about, I'm going to trigger you now, something I helped you with around 12 months ago, which is a past life remembrance. I think it will be important for you to get it out, and important for people to listen, because it's important for now.
Which one was that?
the saving expedition.
Oh, yes. That was I had 3 big past life remembrances. And the saving one, I was a male. I was a commander of a ship. We were evacuating people off the planet. They were going to pull the plug on the planet. We're getting as many people off as we could. And the bad guys were there. In fact, the bad guys were going house to house, and they were looking for us, and they were trying to take us out. But we got a load of people and had to take off. Had to save the crew and the people we had on board. We had to save them. And we took off, and they pulled the plug, and the planet was gone. It was like the Death Star thing in the first Star Wars. And I came out of that, and probably for 3 or 4 days, I had the most profound sense of sadness. It was deep. It was just profound. I was living and working down in Casa Grande at the time, so there were 2 wonderful ladies that I did a lot of healing and that kind of work with. And I called Diana, and I said, I can't shake it. I just can't shake the sadness. It's beyond. I can't do this myself. And so after work, I went over to her house, and she really helped me through it. She was like, you did your best. You saved everyone you could. You couldn't save them all. You had to. and I'm like, oh, they won. The bastards won. They won. They destroyed the whole planet, everything gone. And she's like, you saved the ones you could, and you saved your crew and yourself. You did good. And I'm like, but it wasn't enough. And it's like, you have to know what is enough. And you can only do so much. And is that what's going on right now? Is that our need, our drive, our unconscious yearning to save everybody? Does that come from another time and space? Because, they've blown up and taken out a lot of planets. Look at the asteroid belt and all of that. And the flash weapons, they, destroyed everything. Is that what some of us are feeling, are the echoes from those other time-space continuums? And you can't save everybody. And some days you can only save yourself. But it was the most profound sense of sadness. I didn't feel that way when my parents died. It was incredible because I was feeling for this whole planet and all of the life on it, and those I couldn't save. But as a commander, you have to make the tough choices sometimes, and it's that survivor guilt, and we need to look at that. Each of us, I shared that a bit on chat because people, where is this coming from? Where is the need to save everybody? And is it their calling, and are they at that spiritual level where they need more lessons? You can't make that choice for them. You can't take away that lesson because they'll only repeat it, and they'll repeat it worse. Are you saving them for something worse? Or is that our selfish need to see more and to do more than is appropriate? Okay, I'm off my soapbox.
Well, it got kind of overlooked because of the final piece on Thursday. Mm-hmm. But the piece before was the key to the final piece also. The piece I read out twice, 2 shows running, was the precursor to those 2 pieces. Mm-hmm. And I'm just looking through it now, and I'm going to pull bits out of it because it's important in this phase. Past wars, decisions, agreements, covenants, all converged into what is essentially a small time window. And that is the key, is your trauma was those you lost, but it's not the real focus. It's those you saved. Yeah. That is the key. And this is a failing of humanity. We always worry of what we've lost. You've not lost anything. And this is what I will be reiterating on Thursday. It's just a visual effect that you've lost. Your connection
I have a story.
Your
I have a story for this when you're done.
Yep. No, go carry on. Joe's show, not mine.
Oh, well, no, it was about 13 years ago. No, more than that. 14 years ago, I was living down in Casa Grande, and it was Easter Sunday. And I'm a loner. I've lived by myself for over half of my adult life. So, okay, it's Easter Sunday, and I went for a walk in the desert in Maricopa. Yeah. My walking stick, my water, my cell phone, my gun. Okay. And I was in a dark space. It was, what is this? What's the point? What's the point? I'm working with all these children. They're so broken. Generations of brokenness. What's the point with all the suffering? What's the death stuff? What is this about? And I turned to this saguaro cactus, and I said, Grandfather Saguaro, why? Why are we going through all this? What's it all about? And then they're going to kill us all and destroy the planet anyhow, because I knew what the plan was 12, 13 years ago. I just knew. And I was really angsty. And you know what the cactus told me? It said, all is spirit. It doesn't really matter. All is spirit.
Nothing else matters.
Nothing is lost. It doesn't matter what form you're in.
No.
And my whole body relaxed, and I went, oh, I forgot. It's all spirit. They're not lost. They're just, it's all, the spirit isn't lost, the energy isn't lost, it just goes somewhere else. So if that was amazing and free, it's all spirit. It doesn't matter. They're not lost. They're really not lost.
There's two problems, and it's to do with the programming, and it's to do with the religious construct, and the damage it's done here is immense. Mm-hmm. And what is death?
Right.
And the fear, which was deliberate for harvesting energy. Death is a new beginning. Mm-hmm. And then the externalization of everything is the greater damage. Let me just find it, because I think it's key for people to understand where I'm going with this. There is no heaven, hell, universe, God, goddess, light, dark, space, time, dimensions, technology, church, demons, angels, stars, or suns outside of you. That is the illusion. Everything resides within us. Yes, people end their life, but that's a rebirth for them. It's the same what happens in the universe. The stars go out, and what does it do? It manifests and transmutes into a new star and solar system and planets and beings and life. It's the same. And when people really grasp that, it's like the song before. Some will observe it as a love song. But sometimes when we touch, because society has dictated touch is about putting your hand on another person. But you can touch a person far more without the physical touch, without the external touch. The example is, I've touched a lot of people with my show. I've met very few. And once people start to understand that, they will then begin to understand the bigger picture here. There is no loss. It's just they have transmuted to a different frequency, of which you can regain by tuning in. This is why we talk about going into the self. Because as you go into the self, the real self, you are into the all. And this externalization of everything has been the most damaging program ran by the church and the dark priesthood. And we have to end it. And we will. That will upset a lot of religious people. And I get that. But you've bought into a program. And it is a program. And it was an experiment. It's about harvesting your energy. The whole thing is where you are external and there's some God sitting above you and not inside of you. It's the whole.
It's all energy. It doesn't It doesn't matter, I was told. It doesn't matter. It's all energy. It's all spirit. It doesn't matter. It's just our perception that matters. And my whole body relaxed. Once you get that, you go, oh, what a relief.
Yeah. But the tendency is always to remember the trauma part of it and not the triumph part of it. Because the triumph part of that memory is life went on.
Yeah, we saved a lot. We saved a lot. We saved the ones that needed to be saved.
Well, if the dark forces, if you save only 2 who can reproduce, that is a victory. If you save 4, 8, 16, 32, fine. The dark forces wanted to, and have done for many millions of years, wanted to wipe us out, particularly the white race.
Oh, yeah.
Perhaps that's a nice thing to go into your next part, and there's a couple of things that I know you like most of the shows, but there was a couple of shows that I did, and I'll get into the next one shortly. But the From Russia with Love hit home for you, did it not?
Oh, ow, oh, yes. Thank you. That's good. Thank you. Funny you should mention that, yes. Yeah, this lifetime I'm Ruth. At least 75% or more Ruth. And I had, actually, it rather ties in with my first and worst, even past life memory, which came on me spontaneously, because like I said, I don't consciously ask for them, okay? Let me make this perfectly clear.
Newsflash, you do.
I don't remember. It's not my fault, I tell you. I'm an American. It's not my fault.
Yeah. Blame Trump.
You know what? He wasn't even president at the time. Damn it.
Oh, well. Blame him.
No, and it goes back to the Ruth and all of that. In fact, to conclude that, my little walk in the desert, it was really funny because as I was leaving, I turned around. And do you know what the desert told me when I left after I talked to the cactus? I'm not crazy, by the way, but I heard the desert say, we haven't seen your kind here in a long time.
Yeah.
And I thought that was rather interesting. But, the From Russia with Love, totally, it was, all the martyr and the killing and the snuffing out of the life. And at the time when you did that, I was writing a piece for the e-book, Light versus Dark, and the Kali Ma, and the Levashoff, and the Tommy Williams stuff. And and because of maybe my genetic resonance, it hit me really, really, really hard. And it triggered also this past life remembrance. Like I said, it was the first and the worst. And I was living down in Casa Grande in Arizona City. It was a Saturday afternoon. I'm minding my own business in my little apartment. And all of a sudden I got this horrible, ghastly, blinding headache. I mean, it literally felt like my head was going to explode. It was awful. I laid down. I mean, I'm not I've worked in hospitals. I've had a couple surgeries out of necessity. I don't flip and go to hospitals. I haven't seen a doctor in years. Know that about me, okay? And I was sweating. When I was done with this, I had to change the sheets. They were soaking wet. I was sweating and I was holding my head. I was holding the skull bones in place. It felt like my head was going to explode. The pain was absolutely incredible. And then I was there. I was there. It was a different, I was a female. I was wearing a flowing garment. And it was back, I believe back then. It was the war, the big, big war. And we had been overrun. And when I say I was somebody, I don't mean special, but the people looked on me kindly and as a leader and someone with wisdom and healing ability.
Yep.
And I was passionate and I had fire. And I now belonged to the Dark Wizard. And as I'm knowing this, I am rolling around on my bed, holding my skull bones in place, and I grabbed my cell phone and I called my friend Tom. Tom was my Reiki master, and he lives in Akron, Ohio. He's this wonderful gay guy, gay, bi, whatever. And we had done a lot of healing work together when I lived in Ohio. Every Friday I'd drive an hour and a half round trip to Akron, and, you know, we do meditations and healing for people in the earth and the whole thing. And you develop, when you do that kind of work on that level, you develop a love that's not, it's not at all sexual, but it's a deep love and resonance. So I called him, and of course, he was at his New Age bookstore, and of course there was nobody there because that's the way it's supposed to be. And I said, Tom, the Dark Wizard, he's got me, and oh, Tom, my head is going to explode. Help me, Tom, help me. And he, you know, we worked together. He always knew what to do, and he said, I'm calling in everybody. I'm doing everything I can. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I saw him as like a friend and a handmaiden, and he was there with me, which is why he was helpless, because there was nothing he could do then. And the Dark Wizard, like the rape and all that stuff, like, it wasn't bad, but the Dark Wizard wanted to possess me, my fire, and all my passion, me, my fire, my soul, my spirit. And I would not. So he took this, like, laser, and I said, Tom, he's taken this laser weapon thing, and he just burned out my pineal gland, and my head is going to explode. Help me. And he's going, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And suddenly it was over. Because I died. I mean, it was like rather simple, right? And I went, okay, Tom, I died. It's over. It's just like I went away. I went somewhere else. But that tied into the whole light dark Tartaria from Russia with love, that whole dynamic. So it was rather interesting.
Yep.
But yeah, you tripped me, and you made me finish that up, because I had never been able to quite finish moving that energy off. It was very, very traumatic and painful, physically painful. By the way.
Yes.
That's what I needed to get my attention. I have found that with life. It's like, you know, people don't be like me. I can go putzing along, and I'm being tapped on the shoulder, and you know, going, Michelle, that's my higher self, Michelle,
Yeah.
Michelle, and I'm being tapped on the shoulder, and then they knock me on my ass, and as I'm laying there, I hear, now that I've got your attention. Okay, I'm willing to listen now. Don't be like me. You know, get it a little before you get knocked flat.
Yes. Less stubbornness, which is a common theme.
Well,
you know,
you don't want to go there. It's scary.
Yeah, it's also
it's necessary.
freeing.
It's healing. You need it. Yeah.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah.
Yes, it is. What's your point?
You've got to process it. You know, I said it in a recent show. Why do certain people come to certain people, and people think it's a coincidence? There's no such thing as coincidence in this life. it is a lesson to learn or something that you need to understand or process or heal. And whilst you may choose to ignore your inner self, other people who are tuned to that frequency will not, and the dark will then dance. And that's why people come to you who, for argument's sake, are negative. If you operate in a negative frequency, you will attract negative people. The minute you step out of that frequency and build yourself, those people all fall away. So the falling away that people fear has already happened.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key to understanding those pieces that I've done recently. The falling away has already happened. It's not a future event.
Right.
It's already gone. And it's gone several times, over several lifetimes.
Mm-hmm.
So
I got it. I got that when you first said it. I looked around and I said, what am I giving up? They're not here for me. What am I giving up?
Yeah. It's kind of difficult to explain. Like I said, there's some things you can say, this is it, and there's some things you have to dance around and get people to come to an understanding. It's, you can't say everything right out, straight off the bat. I tend to do that. But there's also times in certain shows where I'll throw one line in and see where it goes. I did that with the 2 worlds, which people are now seeing, and the 4-year loop. Who would grasp it? Let them come to their own understanding. It's getting people to find out for themselves rather than me telling them and they follow it. There are times when it's convenient to follow, and there's times when you have to make your own choices and come to your own decisions and your own understanding of it. The last show was one of them, was the latter.
Right.
So the Roos story had a big effect, and it then obviously triggered you into another lesson.
Yeah.
Which you keep saying you didn't want, but you did. And this is the key to it. The lessons, like time, are speeding up.
Definitely.
And the key is how you process it, and also heal it. But you're not, again, like I've said, you're not just healing the self. This time, you're healing the bloodline.
I so know that. My mother used to get really upset with me. She'd say, well, you can't possibly have that much wrong with you. And I knew back then that I was healing family stuff too. You just keep shoveling shit. Really, that's all you can do. You just keep shoveling, and that's what some of us are here for.
That's what most of us are here for, if not all. The ones that aren't may not be real.
Yeah, exactly. It's time. We need to heal it. I mean, why are we so innocent and guiltless and unaccountable and irresponsible when all of the other entities and off planets are responsible to clean up their mess? What about us?
Yeah.
Just whoop and do it. Let's be done with this, and let's move on to the next level of play, or I look at it as assignment.
Let's head back to where we once were, is the answer.
Yep. And from there, maybe 1 or 2 months of vacation, and then I'm sure I'll sign up for something stupid again. It would be so boring not to, wouldn't it? You know.
Yeah. Kim and I have made a pact. You know, it can be frustrating.
Okay.
Well, it's not can, it is.
Yeah.
Trying to teach people that they've been lied to, they've been duped, they're not as important as they think they are, because everyone is just as important as everybody else, and you've been made a fool out of, and they continue to want to play clowns. You know, if you're going to set yourself up that way, you'll always remain a clown. You know, and ultimately, from the overview, clowns get laughed at because they're comedy. They're in a circus. This planet is a circus, and they're the jokers. They're not in the deck of cards, they're outside of it. They think they are the deck, but they're not.
They don't have a value assigned to it.
No. You know, and so, you know, and you're trying to help people to help themselves, and people fight with you and argue with you and troll you and shill you and you're this and you're that, and there's times when you think, what the F am I doing here?
Yeah. You didn't read the fine print either, did you, Tommy?
I haven't been here, in here, as many times as a lot of people, as I come to understand. It's a while since.
Well, it sucks, let me tell you.
Some people remember, like Chloe, she remembers all 6 loops. I said, how stupid were you then?
Yeah.
You went down the same path, you know.
You've been back for more and you haven't changed a thing.
You know, so, you know, there's other people I've spoken to remember Maldek and Celine and the moon's fallen and all kinds of trauma and tragedy, and, you know, essentially we were all going to die.
Yeah, well, we came close. We came close. They did their best, didn't they? They did their best.
Yeah, they thought they had us. They thought
did their best.
They underestimated some of these souls that were coming in over the past 60 years or so.
That's what they're good at. They're lazy. They're
arrogance. You know,
arrogance and blanking on the term, but yeah, service itself is that way. Minimal effort. They know they're smarter, and it's just a minimal effort. They do the very least, and they need to think. That's the good thing. They think they're smarter than everyone.
They think wrong.
Yeah. That's the
you know, because they get away with certain things where, you know, the odds in here are stacked in their favour.
Not difficult.
And so they think life and their regime goes on. Not this time.
No.
Not this time.
So,
they failed. They failed in 2012. We're in the clean-up phase. They might not like that, and can they still cause mischief? Absolutely. They do it on a second-by-second basis. But this time we have souls in here who are ahead of their game. So the playing field is not stacked the way it was. You know, and they can't handle it, which is why the world's going into chaos, because they are in chaos, and they think that they were the top of the tree, when actually they were shit under the shoe of the king, the master, which is Marduk, and it, there's a lot on this planet who are not aware of those two entities. Well, how can you understand how the world works if you don't know who was running it? These people think they know shit, but how can you know anything if you don't know who was running it? And these people don't know who was running it, and so subsequently they know less, far less, than the average GHI member does. And that includes presidents and prime ministers and all these so-called important dignitaries. They know less than our members, and that's something people struggle to understand. Even Kim, Kim didn't come into this knowing everything. She had to learn, and I didn't come into this knowing everything either. And I learn every day. People sometimes think I'm some sort of oracle, and I just have all the answers. You have to go through a whole range of experiences and wisdom, gain the wisdom to come up with the solutions. Too many people don't want to think on the solutions. They just want to do something and think. But that's how we kept failing in the past. It's reactive behaviour. They've done this, so we have to do this. So they've attacked us, so we have to club them back, or shoot back, or fire rockets back. It didn't work.
Yeah, how's that working for you up to now, folks? If you're deliriously happy, and this is what I've always told, I did anger management classes for all male court-ordered domestic violence perpetrators.
I bet you were busy in America.
Yeah. Job security, baby. but the guys would come in with an attitude, what are you going to teach me? And I just sit there, it's Friday night. I'm here alone. I'm in there's like 15, 20 guys in this room in this plaza that's empty at this point, and they're like, oh, what are you going to teach me? And I just smile and I'd say, if you're deliriously happy and your life is going absolutely swimmingly in the way you want it, I'm going to say, don't change a thing. But the fact that you're here, you might want to consider making just one little change.
Yep.
Just one, You can't make people change, but you can suggest, if you're deliriously happy, don't change a thing.
No.
Right? If not, and that goes with all the members and everything,
But often,
get off your ass and get on your feet and move.
Yeah, often that deliriously happy is a mask.
Yeah.
Which you know better than I, haven't done that type of work. It's all a mask, is it not?
Oh, it's fascinating. With the guys, like I said, there was a resistance, of course, but I wasn't judging them. My job is to present you with this information. And I had only 2 requirements for the group. Show up and shut up. Real simple. You show up, that way you don't violate, and your parole officer doesn't throw you in the big house and it's over. And shut up. You're going to be respectful. You're not going to interrupt. You don't have to listen. You don't have to do anything, but just sit there. Show up and shut up. Real simple.
Yeah.
And so many guys got it. I wasn't pushing. I wasn't demanding. I wasn't trying to control them. And I'm highly cognizant of the fact, and this is even, it amazes me that many therapists know the statistics, but they still have that judgmental piece about males and domestic violence. 50% of all domestic violence instances are initiated by the female, but men are overrepresented. And, the police are always going to haul the guy off. And a lot of times the guys will do it because they can't admit that a woman just beat them up or started it. But, if you're angry, you're vulnerable. People will sense that in you, and that's a weakness. You think your violence and your anger is a sign of strength. Honey, you're weak. And somebody will see that, and they'll exploit it, and they'll get you going, and they'll use it against you. Yes, they will. They'll take you down.
They'll just pick you off.
Well, they did. They did that with this one kid. I told him, I said, your boss was going to get you. Your boss was going to get you because you react and you're angry. And you know what? His boss got him, and he stopped coming to my group, and he went into individual counseling then because he couldn't face me. Because I called it. His boss picked him off.
Yeah.
There's a lot of snipers out there, and they're good.
I worked that out fairly young. His mother was at times a ranter, and I used to just not play the game. And when I was with Chloe, she said, you don't argue with me. I want you to shout and argue back. And I just sit there, listen, and then just throw one line out.
Oh my God!
Boom!
Yeah.
It's the whole powder keg would go off, and I go, "Have you finished?" Okay. It's annoying. I get that, but no one ever won a real argument by ranting and raving. All you've done is bullied the other one to shut up. That's not winning an argument.
No,
that's a loss of control and a loss of mastery of the self.
Exactly, and I have this passion, and I've gotten arguments with my first husband, and I laugh because in the middle of it, somewhere inside my head, I'm laughing. I remember the one time, I don't even know what we were arguing about, but I remember I said, do you know what's wrong with your family? And I saw him get square. You know when a person gets really tight and their shoulders and everything, he got really square. And I went, your family's games are different from my family's games, and I don't know how to play them. And I started laughing. And I think at that moment he realized he'd married a crazy woman. But my point wasn't that your family's effed up and mine isn't. It's like, both of our families are effed up. It's just your games are different than my family's.
You just carried on your family line. Yeah. You chose.
Yeah, that's it. And it was just so funny because the look on his face was just like I said, I think at that point he realized he'd married a crazy woman. Because in the middle of this argument, I'm stating a truth and I'm laughing at myself and him.
Yeah, it's kind of pointless in many ways, You obviously, like Chloe, like myself, and like many other members, John Bryan's another one. Grew up in an environment of hostility, and it's not a pleasant memory, and so the key is not to replicate it. This is the key to everything. So suddenly you are being reminded of an earlier lesson and adapted enough, and that's the key to it. Is don't play the game. There'll always be yourself. Yeah, there'll always be game players, but nobody told you had to play the game.
Yeah. And it's just a game.
Yeah.
Don't make it real. Don't make it about don't make it win-lose.
No, that's the comparative mindset that I keep talking about, and people don't realise they're competing and comparing all day. They're judging somebody else, and that has to stop. The only judge is you of you, And we all slip into it because it's part of the programming. But the key is recognising it and going, right, okay, step back. You know, and don't play the game. You know, I remember the ex-wife. She was from an Irish family who were known for being hotheads and temperamental. You'll have to do this and you'll have to do that, and I'm thinking, Christ, I'm back with my mother and father again.
Oh yeah, you married your mother. I married my mother.
Did you not understand? I don't like being controlled, and I will reject it. And I'm sitting there. I was reading the newspaper, and she's ranting away, and she's getting frustrated because, say something. So
oh no! Oh dear!
I started singing. I thought, oh, I'm just going to sing. And I said, if you love someone, it's natural, not demanding. I said, is that enough for you? Well, the powder keg went off, but it killed it. You know, she has to realise.
I'm arguing with you, yeah. My mother used to do that to me. I'd go inside. And she would be, her nose would be like half an inch from my nose. My sister, Lynn, always, it was a very good observer also. And she said, I just couldn't believe, I don't know where you go. Mom would be in your face screaming and yelling, and you just weren't there. And all I'd hear from a distance is my mother who's raging. And talking to you is like talking to a brick wall.
And listening to you is like listening to a foghorn. Please be quiet. You know?
You feel it pinging off to the outside, but Lynn would go, wow, I just, because I was kind of the target one, because I was the more, I don't know, insightful or like kind of like whatever, but Lynn was like, wow, where do you go? She's screaming at you, and you're just like, sitting there and you're not there. Like, why would I want to be present to that, Yeah,
no point. Right, we're going to go into your fourth song.
Okay.
Whatever it takes, Imagine Dragons. Do you want to explain why that, or should we just play it?
Just play it. It's I'm here to serve. I guess basically that's what it is.
Right, we'll be back with more from Michelle. This is Imagine Dragons and Whatever It Takes. Hi all and welcome back to an evening with Thomas, and we've covered a lot of topics, and we're going to go into some more now with Michelle. And I just reminded myself, because I did start off saying one thing and end up saying another about coming back here again. I haven't, don't have memory of being in here too many times. But Kim does, and remembers us working together before. But what she said to me after one particularly brutal date, speaking to clans, which she has to do on a daily basis, which I'm now telling her to pull back. They're just a waste of time. She said to me, if we get asked to come back here again, please shoot me. Promise me.
Yeah.
So I said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll get a gun with barrels that point both ways, and I'll pull the trigger and shoot both of us.
Yeah.
Because you do get into, it can, people sometimes think it's a high-profile job, and it's all fun and games being involved in what we're involved in. And the reality is, people hear the tip of the iceberg in the show, and a lot of it is painful. hearing
Can't imagine.
they've done this and heard they've done that, and so only bits of it comes out in the show, and it's Kim and I who has to process it and then decide what should be released and what shouldn't. And we've heard lots of bad things in our show. We've covered many topics, but like I said, it's the tip of the iceberg. People think, oh, I'd love to be on the inside with the intel.
Oh, hell no.
It takes, you have to really be able to extreme levels of absorbing it. Kim didn't come from the background I did, and it's been rather difficult for her learning about control systems. She had the control system in front of her, that piece of paper that we showed, but couldn't make, she made some sense of it, and then obviously the show I did with Shane, and then the Factions show, we started to fill in the pieces between us, and eventually, late last October, we filled in the final pieces of who were the 47 in one of the inner rings. But Kim said not so long back, if somebody if you'd have come to me 10 years ago and told me the stuff you tell me now, I'd have thought you were crazy. Mm-hmm. And this is all part of the learning curve for us all, is understanding there is no crazy. That's getting into what is normal. Well, normal is a control system in and of itself, designed to limit what you think you can be or what you think you can experience. And again, it's the external. The internal already knows. Everyone already knows. Will remember what happened in the past. But everyone has different abilities and different levels of soul development, which then only triggers when you reach a certain point. It's like you said, the radio frequency. If your local radio station is 100.1 and you're on 102, you're not picking that station or frequency up. You're going to pick something else up, which is not what you wanted. And essentially that's what life's all about. You're swimming in the information fields of everybody else. And the key is to get the right frequency where you're in tune with you. You have all the truth. You have all the answers. I just help people along and trigger people, But, I didn't come by the answers easily either. I had to go through a range of experiences like yourself to gain that wisdom and understand it, and how to, which is the problem as a child, is this is something's not right, you are different, and you can't articulate it, and then you have controlling parents who are crushing you, and teachers and school systems which is designed for further crushing, and then suddenly you come out and are thrown into a so-called adult world which is full of children and expected to fly. Well, no. And this is obviously what we have to change. We have to make children fly from day one.
It's a pervasive problem by me. I taught at a high school for 3 years, and it's just a glorified babysitter. There's a sadness. I've worked with kids in counseling and all that, and I've worked with adults in counseling. It's pervasive. I've had so many flipping jobs all over. Drove my mom nuts. But it's pervasive. It's epidemic. It is the woof and weave of the whole fabric of society. We have to rebuild the whole thing. We absolutely, positively do.
Yeah.
It's a major undertaking, yeah.
I remember having a chat with Alan from Circle of White Light now, formerly OYM. I said we have to teach, we do realise we have to re-teach every profession. And I mean every profession. Because everything's been taught wrong. Everything. And we have to teach people, that's the biggest sadness, is we're teaching people to think again. A sentient
think
being.
And communicate.
Yeah. A sentient being that doesn't think. Oh dear. That's a bot. That's a program. And so this is the key to future thinking. You can't just, like we have done or are doing, react to a situation. You have to future think is how we can improve that. What are the pros? What are the cons? There's too many who are reacting to the now. You see it on Facebook. People will put a post up, they'll see the headline and they react to the headline. I do it myself at times as well. Where do you go in deeper into the story to gain an understanding? Well, how are you going to understand what's going on if you're just reacting to ticker tape headlines? That's why the portal people put ticker tape headlines, and that then decides your narrative and your thinking. No, they're thinking for you. You only think for yourself when you research yourself. You already know the answers. That's why it's called researching.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key.
Yeah. The more I learn, the more it feels like I'm merely remembering, and you can pull the answers up. You have to listen. You have to want to, and you have to listen. It's pervasive. You know how I feel about that. Where do you start? I mean, you start with teaching people to think and to communicate. I taught a lab in grad school. I taught for undergrads a lab for effective communication, and it was fascinating, because we don't. Not only do we not speak clearly, we don't listen.
Nope.
And we're filtering. We don't realize we're filtering another person's narrative through our own personal filters. So a huge piece in communicating is to paraphrase and repeat back what you think you heard to seek clarity. Because a lot of times it's like you kind of get it wrong, or you only get it half right, and you're not understanding the other person. And most communication is nonverbal anyhow. So
yep.
You've got to, for me, it's feeling, of course, because, it's an empathic thing. But you have to kind of feel your way through the words and, again, reflect back. Is this what you mean? So you're saying this. You're not being stupid. It feels artificial. One of this football player in the lab, he was in criminal justice. It was a Friday night, and I said, okay, tonight y'all are going to the football game, and you're all going to go to parties. So practice these skills, because next Monday class, you guys have to report back, and everybody has to tell me how that went. And this football player was like, oh my God, I went to this party after the game, and I did some of that stuff you were saying. I was talking to my buddy, and he just started spilling my guts. He was having problems with his girlfriend, and he just sat there and talked to me, and it was like amazing. I had no idea he was going through this stuff, and it really worked. And I'm like, yeah, when people realize that you actually are hearing this, it's such a relief. Somebody's hearing you. Can you gift people that way, to let them know you're hearing what they're going through and that you understand, and you're seeking clarity because you want to understand, you want to get it right? What a gift. How selfish are we? I mean,
Yeah.
we're all selfish bastards. We don't take the time to listen to somebody and to, and some of the feelings, but a lot of it, let's check in. Are we getting this right? You're important. You have value. One-on-one.
But then the danger is with people, and particularly for people who have awoken to levels 1 through 3. There's 6 or 7 others. Because of the trauma as a child, the overwhelming emotion that comes out of it is that you must get everything right, because you will be battered by your parents, or the teacher will pull you up. It's this, we have to be right. We have to get it right, because we don't have the allowances that the other people have, whether it be siblings or your fellow classmates. We have been targeted, and then there's that pressure that when you say something, you have to get it right. Well, no, you don't. You can be wrong as well. I've been wrong a couple of times on the show, and I've turned around and said to the listeners, I was wrong on these 2 events, because it's more important for me, for them to hear what is right, than me to be right. Because, that's the key difference, is we can all be wrong. But if you're going to keep being wrong on the same subject or the same topic, then the problem is you, because you haven't learned the lesson. And that's why things in your life repeat. People say, I'm always sick. Well, you've just asked for it. Or I never get any luck is another one. And that person's always lucky. But do you think that they just stand there going, if that person decides, yeah, I've had a lot of luck, but I'd like to have some bad luck, well, that's what they're going to get. And this is where people really need to think what they're saying and what they're doing and what they're portraying, because it doesn't always come across the way you think it does to somebody else, because they're on different frequencies. We're all on different frequencies, but some of us are on a soul family frequency, and it sticks. There's a lot in THI who are part of the soul family. I'm not going to name names. It's not for me to say. Is it a coincidence you came to THI? No.
Not.
Is THI for everyone? No.
No.
Definitely not. It's brutal, and it's triggering, and that's makes it different to many other shows.
Makes it valuable, by the way.
Yeah. I said the very first show, I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. There's loads of people who can tell you that. The RV's happening, ET packages are arriving, and Pleiadians and all kinds of other ET beings are coming to save you. You want to hear that, go somewhere else. You want to hear that from my show. It's about we save us. We have to learn to stop being children, because children is what we are in galactic terms. Let's just say you leave the children realm and then go into the adult, and there's no difference. Why? Because the adults are also children. They haven't, as a collective, made the conscious choice to be responsible, to be adult-like, to then go on to teach others to be the same. They still play the childhood games of arguing and comparing and bantering and my this is better than your this. When you look at it from an overview, it's childlike. And that's what we have to change over the next 2 generations, is make adults become adults, not act like children.
It's a lot of work ahead of us. That's my... you won't see me dancing in the streets and partying out when the shift finally clicks, because it's a continuum and a progression, I think.
Yeah,
I'll be sitting there going, oh, Christ, here we go, it's our turn, oh my God, here we go, now the work starts. Right now I feel we're the most of us, you and Kim and your team are doing the heavy lifting, and what we should be doing in the meanwhile is doing our work, our shadow work, learning to support each other, looking at our games, my favorite games that I like to refer to as Cartman's Drama Triangle, with victim, persecutor, and rescuer. And the wonderful delusion about that is you can go from, well, I'm not a victim anymore. No, you're a flippin' persecutor. You're ripping people up, or you're rescuing every flippin' drowning person in the world. You're still in the game. It's like volleyball. You may not be up front against the net. You may be serving, but guess what? You're still in the game. We need to become more self-aware. Now's the time for us to be doing our work. So we're there after you guys have done the heavy lifting and the big stuff, because this is where the work is going to begin.
Yep.
I'm serious as a heart attack, and you know that. I'm just kind of
a
little grim about that.
Well, I remember, I've thrown a lot of pondering questions out because that's designed to get people to think. I remember doing it on OIM, and even Alan and Steve at the time went silent because they were in a mode of reacting to the now. And the question was, if the cabal stepped down at midnight tonight, what happens next? Well, everyone says party. Fine. What happens next? And crickets.
Yeah. I'll be holding my head weeping and going, oh, shit.
And those that future think will go, well, we'll do this. You'll have a range of solutions.
Yeah, to be ready to go. But weeping, going, oh, God, I hope I'm not doing this alone,
Well, everyone's alone in their own way.
But you know what I mean. The team has to be, we have to be ready to go.
Yeah, and you can only be ready if you prepare. That's the difference. Some people, like the THI groups who just set up, that caused absolute mayhem, which was a massive disappointment to me. That's a lack of thinking, and some people will continue with it, and they'll make the preparations and come up with ideas and solutions and this, that and the other. Sadly, those people are few and far between. The rest will sit back and watch and not partake and wait until the funds come out, and then they say, give me some money. But you haven't prepared. And that's just one example to do with the funds. But this plays out on a day-to-day life where people sit back and wait, and then an event happens and then you don't know what to do. Panic sets in. Well, future thinking changes that, because you set up for all eventualities. That's the key to it. So mentally you are prepared. If I say to the THI groups, here is X number of million each, panic will set in. What are we going to do with it? Why? Because you haven't prepared. You always have to prepare for all eventualities. What if the funds doesn't come out? Well, what have we gained from it? Because there's always a gain. You know, people are looking for the external gain, which is the funds, pieces of paper with numbers on. Yes, we won because the funds have come out. But if you're going to not use it properly, then we haven't won at all. It's an illusion again. And people have to suddenly prepare themselves physically and mentally and emotionally of how they're going to look after those funds. Because if we just throw it all out, it's just going to scatter in the wind. And this is why it's important that people learn to communicate with each other, which is, again, something we shouldn't have to go through. But people just don't get along with each other. And you have to get over that hurdle that my idea is better than yours and my project's better than yours and I should be the leader and now I'm the leader. No, the leader is the one at the back, not at the front. When you understand that, then you're on a better thinking pattern and level. One thing I'd like you to touch on.
Yeah.
Because there was another piece I did last November, which I expected a lot of flack for, and it didn't arrive. I was pleasantly surprised, and it tells you that deep down on a subconscious level, there's a lot of females who are not happy the way things have gone since the introduction of feminism.
Yeah.
And you have your own opinion on that, both on males and females, from experience, and perhaps you can talk about that for a bit.
Well, the brilliant thing about Michelle is she has an opinion on almost everything, all right? Right or wrong, I've got my opinion, by God. Yeah. And recently, I've been looking at the woundedness, the deep woundedness, which I think is the root cause of a lot of devices, male, female, the basic stuff, about race and all the other, religion and all the other crap, but the masculine and feminine, and I'm not an expert, but at this point I do have 2 failed marriages under my belt, which is not what I had exactly when I was a kid. I didn't grow up on my be twice divorced. But they were big learning experiences, and I'm making it work and saying, okay, what's my piece in it? What do I need to do different? People think a lot of times you have to do sweeping changes, but, change one thing. Just change one flipping thing, and it's amazing. To correct your course, you don't do a 30-degree correction because you're going to miss on the other side. So make some corrections. So that's what I'm looking at. And it's a lot of the male-female. And that goes back to what? Mother-father, because what's your first experience with male-female energy? It's your parents at home. And that sets your expectations. I think I made a little... I married my mother twice. Different aspects of my mother, for good or bad. Typically the female is, I think, one of the most predominant forces in your life. Your mother is. She's the one you have most contact with because typically the father is more working and all that. But having said that, the masculine and feminine energy, and I had to look at my parents. They were both wounded. They were toxic. My dad made everything my mother's fault. And she made everything everybody else's fault. It was never her fault. So nobody was at fault. Everybody else was to blame, so that could never be fixed. And my dad was just never there. So I personally had a mistrust of the males. They're never there for me. I couldn't count on men to protect me or to have my back. The ones I encountered, they're either wanting to own or possess you, and they didn't have balance, and they didn't give in return, and you did so. I ended up doing a whole lot and a lot more. And you look at that and you say, okay, it's not working. What are my perceptions? So, like, what do I really think about men? I think I like men, and the sad truth is I've always liked men better than women because I really didn't like women. I'm a woman. I don't like women. Oh, that means that I probably don't like a part of myself, and I was terrified of becoming like my mother. I was always terrified in watching myself. Oh, please don't let me become like my mom.
The female archetypal role model over your lifetime has not gone a good way, though, has it?
Oh, the ones I've encountered, or for me on my...
Oh, in general.
Oh, hell no. I really didn't. I only have one. Up till now, I'd only had one female friend who's been enduring and endearing. Carol, who's in Ohio. She's the only female I could go to, and she loves me and cares for me enough to call me on my shit. She trusts that she can, in a loving manner, say a truth about me and to get me back on track, and that I'm not going to get upset, and I'm not going to backstab her, and I'm not going to get angry. I'm going to appreciate it. I will still be there, and I trust that she's not saying this out of meanness. She is reading me, and she merely wants me to be the best me I can, because most women I've encountered, frankly, have been competitive and jealous, backstabbing and backbiting. If the wounded female, if she doesn't win, she'll be back. She'll be working behind the scenes, talking you down and backstabbing and undermining. And, it's a fight to the death with the female, which is why in counseling I always preferred working with males and boys instead of girls, like the drama. And like I said, they'll come back. They frankly scare me. A wounded female frankly scares me. And I'm a woman, they scare me. I told my first husband, I said, by God, I give you guys credit because you really want to live with women. That is not for the faint-hearted. That is not for the faint-hearted. There's interestingly enough, early this week, because I have been working on these issues, it has come up very strong for me in the past couple of weeks. And the fairy tale. I've read all the fairy tales as a kid, and that quintessential fairy tale of the princesses in power. Yes. I think everybody's okay. That suddenly clicked and made sense to me what the heck it was talking about. Because who put the princess in the tower? It was the evil stepmother, wasn't it?
Yeah.
She was, what was she? She was controlling, she was competitive, she was jealous, she was nasty, she was undermining, and she was...
Low vibration.
Well, she was sexual without being loving. And who was the one who was supposed to protect the princess, by the way? Where's Daddy? Where's the king? Well, he's pussy whipped by the evil wife, right?
Yep.
So he sold out. In exchange for sex, he sold out. And I said, pussy whipped, I probably shouldn't be saying that on radio, but I just said it twice.
Yeah.
But, think about it. He sold out. He sold out. He should have been protecting the princess. And the princess is the healthy feminine. But he sold out. So the king and the evil stepmother are the woundedness of the masculine and feminine energy. They're playing off each other. And the princess, she's okay, what's going on with her? She's a prisoner where? In a tower. what's the tower? Is that could that possibly be a phallic image? Is she a prisoner of sexuality only? Again, with the closed heart and no love.
Yep.
But what is she doing in the tower as a prisoner of sex? What has she sold out, or what is her deepest yearning? Where is her heart?
It's also a reminder of the past.
Oh, she's pining away.
Because it goes back to there's hints at it, in the scriptures amongst all the Bible of when the gods came down.
Yeah.
And I think this is what's playing out at this time, on why the female is struggling more than the male to adapt to the balance of masculine and feminine energy. There's a lot more men who have taken on board the feminine energy and balance than the other way around, and it goes back to a past trauma where the female chose the gods over their fellow man, and
I remember that.
And were active in hunting down man to wipe them out. And there's part of that playing out in modern day, and it's something that the females themselves have got to get over it. And this is the damaging aspect, and also the dark lesson of feminism is will females stand sovereign in their own female energy and then take up portions of the masculine energy, which then balances them out. And the problem is we've particularly the female more than the male, they've swung from one side to the other, and they're exhibiting the worst aspects and characteristics of the masculine.
That's horrible. Yeah, it's awful.
And the lesbian community are a prime example. Why are they picking male and female? Well, if you like people of the same sex, why does one have to be a man? And why does one have to look butch and all manly? It's imbalance. You are what you are. If you, as a lesbian, love another woman, why does one of you have to be the man?
If you don't like men, why are you trying to be one? By the way,
it's another mask. And then you've got the male sexuality. One is being too feminine. Again, it's out of balance. You don't have to be that way. You just have to be yourself. If you choose to sleep with someone of the same sex, fine, just get on with it. Don't put it in people's faces. Heterosexual people are not putting it in people's faces, and this is where the discord comes in. But there's also a discord from way back in time when we were androgynous. So there was no male, female. It was combined.
We were split all the way, every which way.
And then came the reduction program of the splitting of the sexes, and then that then morphed into disconnect of who and what we are, and then the splitting of the brain. There was no left and right brain.
That, yeah. Yep.
And the list goes on and on and on. And then, particularly over the last 50 years, we've created more and more labels. I am a joiner. Really? That all you can do? A being that is the crown of creation, describing themselves by their profession, which largely they've been pushed into by parents.
Mm-hmm.
You know, why are you defining yourself by a profession? You don't realise how limiting that is, and how undermining it is of you, that you are seen as, I'm just a housewife. Yeah, you created a living being. You're not just a housewife who looks after kids. You know, and it's that reductionism, and a lot of it we do to ourselves. And the comparative and competitive mindset is damaging, and we have to go away from that. And that's why money will never always fix everything, unless you've fixed you to understand the purpose and money as a tool, not as an object of desire, where it almost becomes another god, and it's the be all and end all. No, it's not. At the end of the day, they're pieces of paper with numbers on. They don't have value. The value is you. You are the value. And the dark and the clowns know that. And it's about us all recognising our own value. We're not just joiners. We're not just housewives. We're not just husbands. We are everything.
You know, look at the physiology. We all have masculine and feminine hormones coursing through our blood and in our body. It's just a matter of what balance and, you know, how that plays out. But we're all a little bit of both. Why are you hating on the other person? I've never understood. There's a lot I don't understand. I've never understood that piece, though. The battle of, well, there's another battle, the battle of the sexes. Yeah. When you look statistically at in-group and out-group, typically there are more differences within a group than between two different groups.
Yeah.
So, you know, why are you focusing on differences within your own, within females? It's a range. You know, there are some women that are totally capable of carrying me down a ladder from a burning building, where there are some men that probably shouldn't attempt that, or we both get hurt.
Sure.
You know, some men make wonderful nurses, and that used to be considered a female profession. You know, they have that nurturing. It's a range. We all have that capacity, that capability. It just depends where you're focused and what you want to develop. I mean, and that's that woundedness. And I remember some of the old choices back then. Back then with the gods and stuff, and it was, some women went way too willingly, and other women were just kind of passive in it. You know, why would you want to? I love men. I don't know why you'd want to wipe them out. Like I said, as screwed up as men are, they're a lot better than women. We are so wounded and so militarized and everything. It's scary to me because of the
it's the
deep emotion in it.
it's you know, I don't have to be very careful what I say here.
I can.
It's almost when females get together, it becomes dog-like, and I don't mean that to be demeaning, but it's the pack mentality. You know, reference. You know.
Let me tell you a story. Can I tell you a story about my sister's dog?
Right. Okay.
No, my sister had two female dogs. A Rottweiler and a Black Lab. And for some reason, she was doing an animal rescue, and there's a puppy, and dogs typically will not attack a puppy. So the Rottweiler was alpha, but the Lab, Tosca, wanted to be alpha, was actually at first. But anyhow, so because the puppy was in the house, it created tension in the lab, and she went off and she attacked the Rottweiler. And it was a bloodbath. And Lynn got them separated. She got them to the vet, and they got stitched up. And the vet said, okay, keep them separate, introduce them together slowly. So a couple months later, things are going well, and suddenly the lab attacked the Rott again. And it was another flippin' bloodbath. Mm. And the vet said, Lynn, you've got to get rid of one of them. In female dogs, when one wants to be dominant and the alpha, they will fight to the death. With male dogs, they will fight for dominance. Okay, you won. You're alpha, I'm not. Okay. But in female dogs, they will fight to the death, and you will go down with them because it will become a bloodbath and you're lucky to have survived these last two. Yeah. And I went, oh, that's like human females. It's a fight to the death.
It's the pack mentality.
Yes.
That's why that piece was important, because I know deep down that women don't like the role they're in currently. I was expecting to get a reaction.
It's a relief to hear the truth, for goodness sake.
But because of the pack mentality of females, none of them will make the move and go, I don't like what we're doing here. It's like, there's 5 girls at the bar and a guy walks up, and there's always the dominant female, and she'll go, F off ugly or something else, or in England she'll throw the bottle at you.
Oh, geez.
And the other, there'll be at least one, if not 2, who would like to talk to that person. But because of the pack, and the one says F off ugly or whatever, they all go along with it. And they all lose out.
Crazy. It's crazy. It's insane. It's insane.
What, if you don't fancy it, why, they don't even give the lad a chance, and this is part of the problem with that pack mentality, where females have become too rigid and too defensive and far too masculine in real terms. And I got more emails on that show than any other show or any other piece, and 90% of it was from females all applauding me for saying the truth.
It was
good. And I was pleasantly surprised.
Well, good.
We're
not all that. We're not all going to tear your throat out.
And so that tells me that they're accepting of it's gone wrong, and they want to return to the more archetypal female with the balanced male energies. At the moment, it's imbalanced. It's all competitive, which is male, and pack mentality and aggressiveness. Again, it's the worst aspects of male. There's no need to be aggressive. If you're aggressive, you have to be aggressive in defense, not attack. And that's where we have to come to understand each other. It kind of bothers me more, maybe because I'm a male, is the lack of care from females in general.
It's the closing of the heart.
Yeah, that is the archetype. You think, well, there's a load of females in the alt media, and the lack of care is, and the arguments always, if there's any arguments on the page, it always involves the females. Not always, but more times than it should do. Females were more about the balance, the care.
Okay, I have a question on that. So you're talking about the nurturing end. That, to me, that's the closing of the heart.
Yeah.
And if it goes way back to the Draco piece with the female, that's sex and it's rape.
Yeah.
So is that's sex, but it's closing the heart because of the brutality and violence to it.
Yeah.
So it's about the heart. The women need to heal that piece and stop confusing sex and violence and the closing of the heart and being able to open the heart in love. And that can be scary. I mean, there's no doubt about it. That can be frightening because it leaves you vulnerable. Because if the male isn't there to protect you when you open your heart, you're vulnerable and you're going to die. Maybe it's only an emotional death, but there's no such thing as only. So that goes back to the balance of the men need to stand up and be protective without being violent and controlling, because the Draco male was violent and controlling, yet sexual. And the female has to start, oh God, my two biggest lessons in life, patience and trust. So the female has to trust the male to be there for her. So when she opens her heart, she's not vulnerable. So there's that, it's that initial wounding of the two sexes. And that's my take on it, Mr. Williams.
Did you say patience? Oh my.
Damn it.
That's a private joke for those who don't know.
Oh, yeah, patience. Patience, my ass.
But you learn. I'm doing well.
Well, thank you very much. I'm imperfect, but I'm doing it.
Well, there's no such thing as perfect. Never was. That's an illusion and another unobtainable.
That's my joke. Perfect assholes. That's all there are.
You work with what you have and then develop. If you want to expand, you expand and allow yourself the time and the patience to expand. There is no arrival date.
I know. I've learned to become patient with myself, and that's the biggest thing, because it was always, I've got to get this right. I've got to learn this lesson, and it's like, oh hell. And then suddenly you go, wait a minute, it's not just my lesson, it's my family line, and it's humanity, so might as well just relax and enjoy the ride. No, patience indeed.
Right, we're coming near the end. You want to ask any questions, or you want to have any final say?
I just have a little thing I'd like to say in closing to all the people out there. I just want everybody to know that I really didn't agree to do an evening with Thomas frivolously from my ego. So I tend to be a little more guarded. I mean, I'll share my life experiences, but in smaller little doses. This was a lot all at once for me. So just so you know that. So I did have trepidation in doing this show. I put a lot of thought into it. Initially, it made me feel vulnerable, kind of open and raw to share, like massively in front of everybody. But I decided that this really is not about me. It's about all of us. It's about you. It's about me. It's about us. So my intention in my stories and the songs that I chose was hopefully to strike a chord in your life, and maybe to give you some hope, maybe some insight, maybe some courage, and maybe even some passion to know yourself. To know that, even though we may be by ourselves, we are not alone. If there's a shortcut, I'd have found it, but there is no easy way around it. So do your work. Love everyone with wisdom and discernment, but most of all, love yourself first. Love yourself passionately enough to do the hard work, the shadow work. Know that you all are so worth it. And know that you're not alone. I'm here for you all, and CHI is here for you. Just know that. So thank you all for your kind indulgence, Mr. Williams, thank you. And light of the world, shine on me. Love is the answer. Hit it, Tommy.
This has been An Evening with Thomas with Michelle Hansack. I hope you've all enjoyed it, and I hope you take on board what Michelle's just said, because that's the key. And love is the answer. Bye for now.